Hey everybody, welcome to Our Watch. I am Tim Thompson. I am live today with Audra Morgan, but before we bring her on, I just want to remind you to like this video, share it out with your friends, your family, your neighbors. More importantly, get over to ourwatch.com, subscribe there, become a watchman. Whole point of that is, we're bringing the truth into your life, and you know that the enemy hates truth, and so the enemy's trying to shut us down on every platform you can imagine. The best way to make sure you can continue to get good, solid, truthful information is go over to ourwatch.com. Subscribe. We'd love to have you there. Now, today with us, as I said, we have Audra Morgan. We're going to be talking about God. We're going to be talking about truth. We're going to be talking about freedom, important things to you, important things to me, and really excited to talk about these things with our guests. So, Audra Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. You've got a podcast, a radio program. You are on KCBQ, The Answer, down in San Diego with your Eye of the Storm show. So glad to be able to announce that out to people and let people know that they can connect with you on there. But I asked you, what are your passions? And your passions are God, truth, and freedom. I think we share some of the same passions.
Yes, absolutely. It couldn't be more important now than ever, I find, because this is a war on our children, on our lives, on our souls for, where we're going to spend eternity. And so it's so important for us to bring truth and freedom and God back into every realm, because they're trying to remove God, and we can't let that happen. And we know why they want to do it. So
right. Yeah, we look at everything that is happening in our culture. We can trace it all the way back to when we pulled God out of the culture.
That's right.
And everybody always talks about politics. Especially me as a pastor, they go, oh, you're a pastor, you can't get involved in politics. And politics is downstream from culture. Well, what is culture downstream from? Culture's downstream from anything that influences it.
Right.
So the church is an influencing agent. Media is.
Right.
The arts, family, all, education, all of these things influence the culture, then the culture influences the politics. Right. So we are upstream from the culture. We're supposed to be the salt and the light affecting the culture. And we can't do that if we pull God out of it.
Exactly. And, I think that has just been their desire from, the beginning of time, Satan's desires to make sure that we, follow him, and he'll offer you all the wonders of this world that seems so fantastic. And that's why people will fall in line with him, and they don't understand, really what they're engaging with, I don't think, because they don't understand that is eternal damnation when they do follow him and do his bidding. And so it's so important to know that he exists, because then you can see why all of these nefarious things go on in our world at an astronomical level. And I feel like more now it's happening all over the world at the same time, very similar things. So I find it's easier actually to see that. But it's about accepting it and allowing your reality to shatter that you once thought it was, so that you can see the truth and see God in that. We need darkness in order to see the light. I mean, you don't know that you need God unless you see this other side and you're like, oh my gosh.
Right.
But what's so great is that God is all powerful, right? So I'm like, you got to pick the right side. I mean, we know we win. We won already. So in that, I hold steadfast, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to choose, they're losers. I mean, whatever, it's such a easy choice when you really know what two sides you have, and where each one leads.
Right. I in the book of Habakkuk, it's just this obscure passage that, the book opens up, and it's a dialogue. It's the only book of the Bible that's a total dialogue between God and man. And this guy Habakkuk, he's asking God, how much longer do I have to see this stuff? The law is powerless. Perverse judgments are going forth. He's basically complaining to God because of all the wickedness going on all around him. And he's like, I'm done with this. I don't want to see this stuff anymore. Why do you keep making my eyes look at this stuff? And the whole idea is, we have to see these things. You're never going to know the good times or appreciate the good times if you don't know the bad times. You're never going to appreciate God if you never see the alternative.
Right.
We see, think about Adam and Eve. They were walking around and had not sinned yet.
Right.
But they didn't really appreciate God for who he was. They didn't get to that point yet where afterwards, they had to be like, oh gosh, what did we do?
Yeah.
Now that you appreciate God all the more. And we are living in a time where people are being told to compartmentalize their faith. I want to ask you about that. So I talk to many teachers, I talk to police officers, I talk to people in various different professions where they say, I'm being told I need to compartmentalize my faith. I can't bring my faith into the workplace. I can't be a Christian teacher in a public school. I have to shut my mouth about these things. What do you say to people who are being put in a position like that? What's your thoughts?
I say don't let them do that to you, because what's happening is they're doing that, but then they're trying to insert all of this other ideologies and allowing that to come forward, like transgenderism and, abortion. It's like, you have to accept this, but we're going to take God out of it, right? And so I say, don't do that. Stand your ground and know that God will always provide for you and make a way. But if you believe that you got to suck it up and shut up, then he's going to be like, okay, well, then you're going to learn from this, because if you trust me fully, then you can walk into a lion's den and not be afraid. And I will guide your steps and I will give you the words to speak. But if you just are so afraid of man and what he will do to you if you bring me back into it, then you don't know how powerful I am, and that I can make sure that I will make a way so that you can bring it back, right? And if not, then that's not the place for you to be. It's just like with schools or anything like that. Or your job, if you're being told that you have to be this way and it goes against everything in you, that's not the time to lay down and just let them walk all over you. That's the time to stand up and blow the whistle and be a watcher on the wall and say, not today, Satan. But
Right.
I feel like everybody's willing to be kind of pushed over and allow people to dictate things for them. And in that, I feel like their trust in God is wavering because they're not fully standing in his truth.
Right. God, God, truth, freedom, important things to you, important things to me. I know they're important to my audience. Climate change has become a pretty big deal. And I think it's just a way of controlling the people.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to us, when we talk about truth, talk to us about climate change.
So the funny thing about that is everything that they're doing to push that. I mean, carbon is what they're trying to reduce, right? We're all carbon
The
based.
stuff that we're all made out of?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
everything
All right.
living. I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys realize that means you and every animal, every plant. I mean, so nothing's going to live here. Where are they going to be? Underground,
Right.
So it's everything about it is a lie, right? But just like with COVID and all these things. So as long as they tell you something to make you afraid, and you're like, oh my gosh, the world is going to end because we're destroying it. And it's like, yeah, we do things to it, but they also have weather modification, weather warfare, where they're creating these storms. And it's a great business because it's like, I mean, if you have all these contracts that come from that, what a better way to, just destroy things is what they really want. But if you look at all the stuff like the lithium batteries, those are totally toxic. They have these children mining for them in cobalt, right? And you shouldn't even be touching it the way that they are. But these like leach pools or whatever for the lithium, if a bird touches it, it will die instantly. And so none of it is actually good for the environment the way that they want to tell you that. These electric vehicles with those lithium batteries are actually combustible, and they can recombust at a later time. And you'll see them crash into something or whatever, and they'll blow up. It's like a bomb.
Right.
And you can't put it out. It'll be like tens of thousands of gallons of water that these firefighters have to use. You might as well use sand to drown it out. But think about if they want everybody to be in one of those, not only does that exist, but then those charging stations put off immense amounts of radiation. So just imagine being in that car with that battery underneath you, then you plug it in and it's just off the charts, and that can make people sick, right? But they don't want to acknowledge anything like 5G or radiation because that lets their whole story go down the pipes, right? But as long as they can tell you this, and you have to move into a new way of living, right? So they want to push us into, say, a 15-minute city because it's going to be better. You're not going to travel as much. Their idea is they don't want us to drive. That's not about the climate. It's about control.
Control.
Right? And then you get in an electric vehicle, and all of a sudden they could put geofencing in it and be like, well, you can't go outside your zone, right? And they're using their surveillance to do it. So in other countries, we have ALPR here. It's the automatic license plate readers on their surveillance cameras. But in other countries, while they've had them already, they're using them now for people that go into low emission zones. And so it's like, well, if you have a gas guzzler and you just did that, I mean, now we're going to have to give you a ticket, right? So it's about charging people and de-incentivizing or incentivizing people to get into this new way of living. Has nothing to do with the climate. And that's what's so sad, is that people are willing to say that we need to walk, bike, or ride public transit, which nobody rides in San Diego. It's a very bad, like they spend millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on it, and there's hardly any ridership. And so now they're even allowing kids to ride for free. And it's like, how, I'm sorry, what?
Right.
You're allowing kids, so then they can even cross the border if they wanted to at that point, and nobody's none the wiser, right? So, it's just literally about control, everything that they do, getting you into a place where, you know, you are not going to make decisions for yourself. Let us do it for you. And that's how they always offer up a problem. The problem is them, is the government and the things that they're doing. But they're always going to be the one to be like their knight in shining armor. And look at what I have for you. I have a 15-minute city for you, and it's going to be so great.
Right.
But if not everybody does it, there's no way you're going to reduce carbon at the amount that you want. And regardless, the amount of carbon that we produce is nothing compared to what they're claiming it is, and it's not detrimental to us.
Right. And if you go to third world countries and see what they do for, you know, trying to save the planet, I mean, it's ridiculous, off the charts carbon emissions.
Yes.
They don't care, because they're not going to be pushed into a position that we've been pushed in. We've allowed ourselves as a society to be pushed into. I want to remind my audience that, you know, most of my audience is Christian. I want to remind them that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And a sound mind looks at these things and goes, okay, it's just not adding up. These things do not make sense. If it did make sense, they would be pushing this on places like Indonesia and Nigeria and other places that they're just putting all emissions out into the world. They don't even give a rip. You know, another thing I want to remind my audience is this. This heaven and earth are going to pass away.
Yeah.
God's going to create a new one. Yeah. Us trying to save this planet is a exercise in futility. We need to remember that. You know, open up the Word of God and see what God says about these things. We aren't supposed to be worshiping this planet.
That's right.
God, truth is important. Freedom is important. And I believe that you probably believe that the same way I do, that we have COVID round 2 coming up.
Oh my gosh.
Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
Well, especially because I go to meetings down in San Diego and they're all starting to mask up. But see, it's funny because they'll do it sometimes. And then like one day they won't, one day they will. They'll be close to somebody, not. It's all a charade, right? But they'll start saying, you know, we have the new bivalent vaccine that's coming out because the cases are moving, like we're getting more cases. And because it's
we're
mutating.
heading into flu season.
Yeah, right.
Gotcha.
I know.
Okay. All right.
And the other vaccines don't work. So this new one is a one-time and you're done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how many times have we heard that? And how many times are you going to say that about each vaccine? Because they're also saying that the more times you vaccinate, there's going to be mutants, like mutations, right? And so you're always going to need a booster and another vaccine for that. And I'm like, so you're telling people that because they're vaccinated, they're always going to need to be vaccinated. If you read between the lines, you're like, what? I mean, so at some point, I mean, are people going to be like, I'm on my 100th shot? You know, and we have a pandemic preparedness accord coming down the pipe from the WHO and the UN. And, you know, Biden and all these other countries have signed on to it. Biden actually created a pandemic preparedness committee for this to prepare, right? And the city and the counties, they're doing their preparedness. The county of San Diego just got $43 million to prepare for another pandemic, right? I mean, so as long as they're preparing for it. But it's all a facade too, just like the climate, right? But as long as they make people so afraid, oh my gosh, this other one's coming. It's like the invisible killer dot, and we're just supposed to be so afraid that, you know, we come to them and say, whatever you need to give me. But nobody cares what's in these shots. Nobody cares. I mean, they care more about what they're putting in their vehicle than what they're doing with that, because you want to blindly trust these people thinking that they're going to help you, because who wants to believe that they're not? That's the thing. That's where you have to understand the good and the evil, because as long as you think everybody's always good, that you would believe their intentions would be justified. But when you can see that they're not, and that anytime we would always try and bring information to them about these shots or about the masks or the tests, the supervisor, Jim Desmond, who is my supervisor, had told me in a private meeting that the reason we stay in an emergency at the time was because of the money.
Right.
And I said, well, what about these PCR tests that have been recalled? Well, I mean, it's for the money. And it's like, but that's blood money. That what you guys are doing, it has nothing to do with the truth.
Right.
And that's what upsets me so much is that I'm like, these people are lying blatantly. And as long as you just let them keep saying it and don't put any kind of energy in front of it saying, no, that's not true. And I don't care if they believe it or not. I'm putting the truth out there because that matters. As long as we let them tell the truth, then that's what people are going to believe. But I know that that's not the case. And so, we work very hard to bring the truth to these meetings so that people can see and know that there's other options, that you don't have to just believe what these people are telling you.
Right.
But that's why we need to stand our ground now. And actually, like, we're having a rally this Saturday, but it's to tell people to stand up. Let's quit complying. Let's quit acquiescing to this, because we perpetuate the evil, and like Satan needs us to play along as well, not in the way of like doing his bidding, but we do it by way of acquiescing to the evil that goes on. So if we stand against it, then we're doing something to push back. But it's our duty to do that and to bring God back into this and make sure that we're standing in truth and freedom and not just going along to get along, because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. This isn't about that. This is about life or death.
Right. Yeah. So talk to me about your event that's coming up.
Yeah. So it's a worldwide freedom rally. I've been working with the worldwide freedom rally people for about 3 years now. And so we pick about 4 or 5 rallies a year, and we'll do them all at the same time in different countries, towns, and cities. And it's really neat to see all these people fighting for the same thing. And in so many other countries, they have thousands of people just in the streets. And so I know that one day we'll be there. But so I continue to have them. It'll be Saturday at Balboa Park at the first parking lot to the left off of President's Way and Park Avenue. And we'll be doing a little march because there's these little, it's like a world or international cottages there. And I was like, we'll walk around the world. Like, we'll do a little march around the world. There's even a UN one there. And I was like, let's go visit the UN and tell them. But it's exciting because these people are also, like, the ones I work with across the world are able to go to the World Health Organization and the United Nations type of meetings. And I'm thinking, man, I wish I was there with you guys, because that's like really where it kind of is starting. And we're just kind of dealing with the aftermath of it. But it's inspiring to work with people who are also about all of the same things and just bringing our world back to a better place together.
Yeah. You look at bringing the world back, what the world needs to be brought back to truly is God.
Yes.
And they need to know that there is a Savior named Jesus Christ, and that he loves us desperately, and that he has our best interest in mind. And if you find yourself in a relationship with him, you really don't have to be fearful of all these other things.
You don't.
It really frees you up. And I really want people to embrace that, because there's nothing more that Satan wants than for us to walk around in fear.
Yep.
Because when somebody's in fear, you can control them.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to be controlled by him at all. I don't want anybody I know to be controlled by him. I want us set free. The person who's been set free is free indeed. And we love freedom. And we have lived in a free country. I watched when COVID first happened. I remember driving along with my wife, and I remember hearing on the radio that they were going to start to enforce mask mandates. And I remember looking over at my wife going, nobody's going to do that.
Right.
This is America. Nobody's going to, this isn't China. I used to be a missionary, traveled all over Asia. I would travel through China all the time, and I'd see everybody masked up. And I remember feeling bad for them, going, man, it just must suck to live under such tyranny. Mm-hmm. And then when they said it's going to happen in America, no way. Americans are free. We're not going to do that. Then I started looking around and go, man, Americans aren't free. They're dumb. And I started, my mind was blown at how many people capitulated to that and really walked around in fear. I'm grateful that many of the people that did mask up, their eyes are being opened.
Yes.
They're starting to realize, hey, I made a mistake. And hey, we all make mistakes. But round 2, I believe, is coming. When something works, the enemy's going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, we have election coming up, right?
Right.
So why not do it then?
Right.
But I wanted to piggyback off what you said about not, like, you can be living in this place where so many people are fearful, and it's like you're living in a totally different world, because they're living in the fear world of where they're so afraid that they're doing all of these things, and they have to use us against each other as well. Like if you better wear a mask because you're going to kill me kind of thing, right? And so it's easy to get us to enforce it upon each other. But it's more inspiring when you see, like, when someone take off the mask, they're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to do that too.
Right.
And it's like, they feel like, wow, and that's why even with God, freedom or truth, you stick your toe in the water and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to dive into that,
Right.
But it's a weird place to be. And I talk about this all the time where it's like you can have peace in the storm. Like, even though there's all of this stuff and chaos going around you, you can sit and it's a different feeling, and you understand it differently. So you're not riding on those waves that the people are, and just constantly.
Right.
But it allows them to be calm too. They can see it in us,
Right.
and it kind of gives them hope or inspiration to know I don't have to be afraid. And that's why I'm tired of people being afraid,
Right.
because it breaks my heart. I'm like, you're literally so afraid that you're willing to, like, jump off a cliff because they tell you that that's what's best. And so that's why I fight so hard, is because I'm like, no, I'm not going to let you do that to them. Like, I spent a lot of time sick and, trusting in the medical system. I mean, I was paralyzed for 8 years and used to be on a bunch of meds, and I thought it was the only way. I thought, I can't get off of these. And people would tell me, get off. And I'm like, you're crazy, because if I get off of these, I'm so scared of my symptoms. But I had to step into that world and trust God and know that He could get me. And I have been free from that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. But I was so hell-bent on believing that, so I love that I can share that with others and be like, you actually don't need that. God gave us 2 immune systems. We were built perfectly. And the more we do to destroy it, then you're going to need help. But as long as we allow God and bring Him back, He can heal you just like that.
Right.
And so we just need to know that we are incredible beings, and we don't need all the things that, they're telling. Even the world is self-healing. So like the climate, it's like, don't listen to the lies. Don't let Satan, deceive you, but trust in God and the truth, and He will light your path, and there's nothing to be afraid of.
Amen to that. Audra, how can people connect with you?
So like you said, my radio show is on KCBQ. It's on Saturdays at 5, 1171 AM and 96.1 FM. I'm also on BitChute and Rumble for those. And I have a group on Telegram. It's San Diego Storm. And then on Instagram and Facebook, I have a few different handles. One is I Have the Storm, and then there's also Dra J. Morgan. People think it's Dr. A.J. Morgan, so if you just spell it like that, it's fine.
Awesome. All right. Well, Audra Morgan, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming out. And I also want to thank all of you for tuning in. Want to make sure you, again, share this video out with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Go to ourwatch.com. Become a watchman there. Would love to have you as part of our team. So God bless you. We'll see you next time right here on Our Watch with Tim Thompson.